Taiwan investigates a former TSMC executive that allegedly took top trade secrets to Intel. Taiwan continues to debate its record-breaking special defense budget.
已经跟美国完成初步的协调，来说明美方确实是有供售的意愿。
买66架的 F-16V 一架都还没有来。
Over 100 people are dead after Hong Kong's most severe fire. As the city grieves, many are asking what happens now. Plus,
最佳原住民语歌手奖，古姆巴萨。
we chat with an award-winning indigenous singer at the Amaze Music Festival. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chan. Taiwan is investigating a former executive of chip giant TSMC accused of taking cutting-edge chip know-how to U.S. chipmaker Intel. Prosecutors raided his properties and are moving to lock down his assets. Lo Wei-jen, a U.S. citizen believed to currently be in the U.S., has not been charged with a crime, but a probe could touch on national security and trade secrets. Chris Goring reports.
Taiwanese prosecutors have raided the homes of former TSMC executive Lo Wei-jen, escalating an investigation into whether he took trade secrets to U.S. chipmaker Intel. Prosecutors confirmed Thursday they raided Lo's homes in Taipei and Hsinchu. They seized computers, USB drives, and other electronic devices. A court also approved freezing Lo's financial assets in Taiwan, like stocks and real estate, assets likely worth millions of U.S. dollars. Aside from gathering evidence, the moves may be a form of leverage to compel Lo, who is a U.S. citizen and believed to be in the U.S., to return to Taiwan for the investigation. Neither Lo nor anyone else has been formally charged in the case. Taiwan's economy minister addressed the case Thursday, noting that while one person's impact might be limited, the government is watching closely.
我们还是会密切观察整个这个半导体的生态系的一些影响。那初步看起来，我们还是 觉得一个人可能造成的损害可能还是有限，但是这个还是要密切观察，现在还没有办法马上可以做判断，这就要司法来看啊，因为除了人身之外，还有一些财产的问题啊，他在台湾应该还有一些财产的问题啊。
TSMC says there is a high likelihood that their former executive could use or disclose trade secrets on its most advanced nodes, like 2nm, A16, and A14, the crown jewels of the chip industry. Intel, meanwhile, says the claims are without merit and that it bans staff from bringing in confidential information from past employers. All of this comes as the U.S. makes a big push to build up its own chip industry, with Intel itself now partly owned by the U.S. government. The question for Taiwan now is whether this case remains one focused on a single executive or becomes a larger test for how the country protects its most advanced technology. Scott Huang and Chris Gorin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
For more on the trade secret case, Chris Gorin spoke to Olivia Shen, Director of Strategic Technologies at the United States Study Center at the University of Sydney.
Olivia, the stakes in this case seem to be quite high. It involves TSMC and Intel, the biggest chip makers in Taiwan and the US, and involving the most advanced tech in the industry. So things are moving very quickly, but when you look at this case, what's your main takeaway?
My main takeaway is that this is such an interesting case that highlights how technology security is at the absolute forefront of people's minds right now. Now, we've spoken a lot about sort of the kind of export controls and other levers that you can use to control the access to the physical hardware and the infrastructure, but the most difficult thing to control is, in fact, people.
Now, this case comes at a very sensitive time in U.S.-Taiwan relations. The two countries are negotiating a trade deal, which is reported to involve many aspects related to the semiconductor industry, especially as the U.S. attempts to bolster its domestic chip capacity. Do you think that cases like this could create some friction in that relationship?
It's probably going to be a source of friction, no doubt. We have to factor in that TSMC and Intel, they are partners, but they are also competitors. So TSMC is an absolute indisputed titan of producing advanced semiconductors at 5 nanometers and below. Intel is trying to capture a part of that market, but they have been quite laggard in their progress in achieving that market share. There's a big question mark around how long Taiwan and TSMC's silicon shield will hold, right? And the power of that silicon shield is only as good as the exclusivity of the technology and the IP that TSMC holds as well. You've already seen just this year Taiwan use its national security laws to indict 3 other former TSMC employees for leaking trade secrets to a Japanese company, Tokyo Electron, I believe. And this is probably a sign of things to come.
And finally, Olivia, what do you think that this case and cases like it tell us about the state of global chip competition at this moment?
I think what's really interesting to me is how these commercial decisions and national security decisions are becoming increasingly fused. We've seen that trend over the past couple of years already, but now it's really getting down to brass tacks of not just controlling supply chains or specific foundries, but now also specific people and the actions of individual employees within an organization. I do wonder where this is going to head. Are we going to be doing a lot of investigations authorized under departments of commerce into specific entities, specific senior executives? What does that mean for an overall innovation ecosystem where traditionally some of these players and some of these people do move very freely between companies? Yes, it is often under the auspices of some sort of non-disclosure or non-compete clause, but this is now looking at it from a very, very specific national security, national interest lens. And I wonder about how many people are going to be wrapped up in this continuing trend.
That was Olivia Shen from the University of Sydney. Taiwan's Coast Guard says it intercepted 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships that entered Taiwan's restricted waters on Friday. Officials say patrol boats were quickly deployed to shadow the vessels and issue warnings until they left the waters off Taiwan's outlying Jinmen Islands. China says its Coast Guard was conducting routine law enforcement patrols, a claim Taiwan rejects as inaccurate and misleading. Beijing regularly sends ships into waters near Taiwan to pressure its military. The debate over Taiwan's record-breaking special defense budget continues, with the opposition calling for more details on how the money will be used. Alan Lu reports.
Here in the legislature, a $40 billion special defense budget is under review. Premier Cho Jung-tai is calling for support, saying strong defenses are essential to maintaining peace. But opposition parties are still strongly criticizing the plan. Taiwan's cabinet approved the proposed budget on Thursday, shortly after it was unveiled by President Lai Ching-te. The Defense Ministry says the hike in spending comes as China ramps up military activity around Taiwan, which it claims as its territory. Defense Minister Wellington Gu says the budget will be spent on military equipment from abroad and domestic weapons production.
已经跟美国完成初步的协调。 获得美国国防部安全合作局正式提供采购的项量、报价资料以及交易的期程等等的资讯，来说明美方确实是有供售的意愿。
The spending plan is meeting resistance. Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang, focused on the remark President Lai made during the rollout speech.
北京当局也以2027年完成武统台湾为目标。 加速侵略台湾的军事准备，持续升高在台湾周边的演习及飞弹侵扰。
Opposition lawmakers question why, given this timeline, the proposed defense budget stretches all the way to 2033, if the threat is that imminent.
如果今天我们总统府、我们相关的国安单位的确获得了相关的情资，认为2027年中共会武力反台。 那2026年，明年开始，是不是大家就要开始进入备战状态？
The smaller opposition Taiwan People's Party called Lai statements a fear-mongering tactic and questioned the U.S. track record of delayed arms deliveries.
里面包括有2000多亿的 买66架的 F-16V， 请赶快送到台湾。到目前一架都还没有来。
Although Taiwan is looking to purchase big-ticket items like American fighter jets, much of the budget will be spent on domestic industries, producing things like drones and missile defense. With the legislature set to review the budget, there are now calls for President Lai Ching-te to appear before lawmakers and explain directly how the money will be used. Fu Hua-hong and Ellen Lu in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
A proposal to exempt Chinese spouses from having to give up their original nationality to hold office has cleared its first hurdle in the legislature. That's despite ruling party lawmakers saying it poses security concerns.
涉及到国家安全的问题所以我们认为，这个时候任何人来修改这个国基法的话，都是不恰当的了特别是当中共对台湾有不断的武力统一，甚至于各种统一的企图的时候。
Taiwan's Nationality Act currently requires dual citizens to give up their non-Taiwan citizenship to run for public office. The draft bill introduced by the main opposition Kuomintang would drop that requirement for people with both Taiwanese and Chinese status. The bill's introduction comes amid controversies around Chinese spouses in Taiwan, particularly those that hold public office. The KMT says that there's already a basis for the amendment.
陆配在台湾取得中华民国国籍，10年后能够参选，然后赢得选举，成为民代，这些都是陈水扁跟蔡英文任内的事啊。
The bill will now move on to committee review. A China-born woman who once almost became a legislative candidate for the Taiwan People's Party has been detained on suspicion of China-backed election interference. Prosecutors say Xu Chunying, who has lived in Taiwan for 30 years, took money from China to help then TPP chair Ko Wen-je's 2024 presidential campaign. They say she also supported an independent politician's run for Taipei mayor in 2022. Neither candidates won, but they did split the vote in highly contentious elections. She's also facing investigation for illegally transferring money between China and Taiwan and defrauding banks. The TPP says it doesn't know the reasons for Xu's detention and urged prosecutors to follow due process. Hong Kong's deadliest fire in decades is now under control, according to local authorities. But for affected residents, the road to recovery will be long and difficult questions remain. Leslie Liao reports.
Over 100 dead, with hundreds more injured or missing. A deadly apartment fire in Hong Kong, which started on Wednesday, is finally brought under control.
Our firefighting operation is almost complete. What's next is the search and rescue operation.
The fire burned through a multi-building public housing complex called Wong Fuk Court within hours. At the time, the residential high-rises were undergoing massive renovations. The buildings were covered in bamboo scaffolding and a layer of green netting material. Authorities suspect that these materials did not meet safety standards, which contributed to the fire's rapid spread. Authorities are looking to hold people accountable, with police having already made arrests.
Police arrested 3 men around their 50s at midnight, who are the company executives in charge of the renovation at Wong Fuk Court. They are being detained at the moment. Police went to their office to collect evidence and conduct investigation.
The suspects are all being investigated for manslaughter. At the same time, city officials announced they are stepping in to help affected households.
In order to provide immediate help to the affected residents, we will start to distribute an emergency fund of 10,000 Hong Kong dollars to every housing unit.
But the money may only be a short-term fix for a long-term problem. Hong Kong's deadliest fire in decades has not only claimed lives, but also livelihoods. Hundreds of people evacuated to temporary shelters, including people from surrounding buildings. But Wong Fuk Court, a low-cost public housing complex, is home to an estimated 4,500 people. For them, the big question is, where do they go from here?
This morning, I came here to register to pick up pharmaceutical drugs and deal with some other stuff.
差不多都是老人，退休老人，基本上没有什么钱了。 现在连住的地方都没有。
Hong Kong's housing prices consistently rank among the world's highest. For many of Wong Fuk Court's residents, finding a place to live will prove challenging. While the fire has been brought under control, questions about Hong Kong's construction practices and housing policies will continue to burn. Klein Wong and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, Honduras is holding its presidential election this Sunday, and relations with China and Taiwan are critical issues for voters.
From a small studio in Taiwan to a global community for undaunted voices.
I'm just very grateful that they are able to spend time being part of Taiwan Talks and also being here with us today.
It's so refreshing that from a different country, from Taiwan, we are actually getting to see a show without noise, without yelling, and it's just complete facts and expert opinion.
Every single episode is about a Taiwan perspective.
Taiwanese speaking something from our heart.
Bringing forward all these different perspectives and voices to engage the world more seriously and continuously.
So the world will know that we are part of this globalized world.
British warship transited the international waters.
We're facing
without compromising our national security.
Maybe a lot of potential for these countries.
How important do you think that is?
The rule of law-based order.
It's been 3 years of almost every waking hour devoted to the show. Today, we have something, and that something is precious.
For more stories from Taiwan and Osaka, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. This Sunday, Hondurans head to the polls to vote for their next president, and relations with China and Taiwan have emerged as key political issue for voters. Cho Jung-tai explains how this election could be a landmark moment for Taiwan's global partnerships.
In just a few days, Honduras will vote on its next president, and the result could have huge implications for Taiwan. 2 of the 3 major presidential candidates have indicated support for restoring diplomatic relations with Taiwan, just around 2 years after Honduras cut ties with the island in favor of China. This would be a major reversal, and a rare one. The first time any country has switched recognition from China to Taiwan since 2007. It would bring Taiwan's dwindling list of diplomatic allies up to 13. A staggering blow for China, which has been trying to isolate the country, which it claims as its territory. One frontrunner, Salvador Nasralla, has explicitly pledged to restore ties, calling relations with Beijing a mistake.
I will re-establish relations with Taiwan. Taiwan is our ally. Taiwan is an ally of the U.S., and we depend on the U.S. Not only is Communist China against the U.S., they don't do business with us. Not only that, we've lost all our shrimp exports. Coffee exports are down half since we established relations with China and left Taiwan. That was a grave error.
Another major candidate, Nasrias Fuda, has said the country was, quote, 100 times better off with Taiwan, and has promised to move Honduras away from China. The only frontrunner who has not publicly indicated support for ties with Taiwan is Honduras's current defense minister and ruling party candidate, Rishi Moncada, who follows the ruling party's line and is likely to stick with China. Taiwan has become an issue in this presidential race, largely due to widespread disappointment with how switching to China has affected the Honduran economy. One not yet released report by Expediente Abierto shows that even though Honduras is buying a lot more from China, Beijing hasn't returned the favor. Honduran exports to China haven't grown, leaving a huge trade gap. The shrimp industry in particular has been hit hard. Taiwan was once the largest market for Honduran shrimp, buying around 40% of the country's shrimp exports. After Honduras switched ties to Beijing, its shrimp exports fell dramatically. Coffee exports are also down.
Y hay un sentimiento de que ellos nos venden mucho y nosotros les vendemos poco y tenemos mucha presión de parte de China para que esa situación continúe. Entonces hay un sentimiento de cometimos un error, comercialmente estamos perdiendo.
Analysts say there's also a feeling that restoring ties with Taiwan would help Honduras align more with the United States. China appears to know what's at stake. China's embassy in Honduras has spent weeks amplifying messages on how the country has benefited from relations with Beijing, highlighting things like support for its shrimp and coffee industries, educational opportunities, and disaster relief aid. It also posted this more direct message, urging Honduran politicians to strictly observe the One China principle, act prudently on the Taiwan issue, and not harm China's sovereignty in any way. But some say the moves could be too little, too late.
Pero hay un sentimiento que ya no se cree mucho en lo que promete China.
If Honduras switches relations back to Taiwan, analysts say it could influence other countries in the region, especially those who have recently switched ties to Beijing and those that face similar economic concerns.
So these would be some kind of a game changer because, of course, this would open the discussion or the debate in other countries like Panama, for example, or the Dominican Republic, which were also among the latest countries. And of course, as you mentioned, it could also add to the ongoing discussion in places like Guatemala or Paraguay.
But the race appears unpredictable, with polls showing it could be close. And even if one of the pro-Taiwan candidates is elected, it's too early to say for sure whether they will follow through on their campaign promises. With so much at stake, Taiwan's foreign ministry has said it's watching the race closely. And on the other side of the strait, China has made clear it's invested as well. Patrick Chen, Larry Isiano, and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Vice President Bi-khim Hsiao has met with a delegation from Panama, urging stronger cooperation despite pressure from Beijing. This is the first delegation from Panama to visit Taiwan since the two countries cut ties in 2017 when Panama switched diplomatic recognition to Beijing. The delegation was led by Panama's co-chairs of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. Beijing had ordered the delegation not to go, and Panama's president said it was not an approved trip. They also met with Foreign Minister Ling Jialong, who expressed hope for the countries to restart their partnership. They discussed economic cooperation and their key roles as regional transit hubs. The Finance Ministry has slapped anti-dumping duties on Chinese steel and beer products, maxing out at nearly 52%. Some imported beers in Taiwan, like Bud Heavy, are brewed in China. They will now be subject to duties ranging from just over 19% to nearly 52%. Hot-rolled steel products in low-cost malleable alloy will face duties ranging from just over 16 to 20%. Customs officials say the duties will take effect retroactively from July 3, 2025 and remain in place for 5 years. In October, the community of Dulan on Taiwan's east coast hosted thousands of visitors for its annual Amis Music Festival. But what was it like to perform there? Our Zoom In, Zoom Out interview show tagged along and spoke with Kumu Basao, the 2025 Golden Melody Award winner for Best Indigenous Singer, to find out.
Because we all know that you got the Golden Melody Award for the Best Indigenous Singer this year. So since you got the award, has anything changed so far when you're making music?
我觉得在我还没有踏入音乐圈，我其实一直都在努力的争取很多表演跟舞台的机会，希望自己有一天被看见。那我觉得得了金曲奖对我来讲最大的改变是我更勇敢。 因为我更敢跨出去做我喜欢做的事情，因为被鼓励了，被肯定了，所以我就觉得对我来讲，音乐不会停止，我会继续创作更多好听的音乐给大家听。
How would you define music for maybe your where you're at right now, in maybe one sentence or a phrase?
我觉得其实音乐就是生活，就是人生。因为我们透过音乐在讲我们的故事，讲我们的人生，或是我们看到、我们感受到所有的一切。所以这是我对音乐的，就是解释。但对我来讲，音乐是我的生命，所以我从大概幼儿园我就一直唱歌到现在。所以能够站到这么大的舞台，我其实一直都是很感恩的。对。
Can you maybe show us a little bit of movement or the group or the melody that you're feeling right now? Show our audience.
我带来一首是我们南投一个国宝阿嬷教我的一首歌，叫《真正的女人》。真正的女人，来自南投部落的歌，对，谢谢。
For more behind-the-scenes interviews, you can watch this full episode of Zoom In, Zoom Out, available on the TaiwanPlus website and YouTube. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Before we go, we take you to London to see some of the city's landmarks made out of gingerbread. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from here in Taiwan and around the world, check out TaiwanPlus.com.